The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Gwilda Wiyaka's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the Science of Magic or endorsed in any manner by Gwilda Wiyaka, Relmar McConnell Media Company, its affiliated networks, stations, or employees. Welcome to the Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, a program dedicated to uncovering the unified nature of reality and humanity's ever-evolving place as truly galactic beings. For more information on the Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit us online at www.thescienceofmagic.net.
Welcome to the Science of Magic, a place where science and magic come together to transform fact into evolving truth. We can be found on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. This hour we'll be exploring Return of the Goddess. In order to discuss the return of the goddess, we must first address what she is and why she left. This requires a cursory examination of the astrological ages and their effect on humankind. The astrological ages through which our planet moves are characterized by varying degrees of male-female or god-goddess balance. For the sake of brevity, the age of Taurus is predominantly masculine, while Scorpio is predominantly feminine. The ages of Leo and Aquarius each hold the frequency of male and female equally and in balance. In the 5 ages surrounding and including Taurus, we're in a masculine dominant time. Within the 5 ages surrounding and including Scorpio, we're feminine dominant. When our planet moves into either Leo or Aquarius, we're entering into time that supports unity. We're currently transitioning out of a male-dominant period and entering the balanced age of Aquarius. The challenge both men and women face is in remembering what it means to access goddess or the true feminine, as it's not been fully expressed for over 12,000 years. The way we view power has been distorted by the predominantly masculine frequency within which our reality has been formed. We've come to see the feminine as weak and disempowered. As we move into the masculine-feminine balanced age of Aquarius, women are struggling to regain their power with virtually no reference points. This can manifest in women unnecessarily fighting men for power in masculine terms, often resulting in an intolerant feminist attitude that serves no one. The other approach can be attempting to manipulate power from the men through use of distorted feminine wiles. Unfortunately, blame for the imbalance of power has often been projected onto our men, when they really had nothing to do with it. These are simply the characteristics of the ages our planet periodically moves through. As women, it's important to realize that in their heart of hearts, our brothers simply want to be met. The counterbalancing feminine energy has been virtually unavailable to women, creating a sense of disempowerment and resulting in backed-up rage. Men also, unable to access the feminine counterbalance, look to the women to provide it. When it's not available even through the women, it can be experienced as a form of abandonment. Often mothers could not be fully present for them, nor could their sisters, wives, or daughters, leaving some men with a devastating feeling of inadequacy and failure. The resulting desperation may drive men into trying to control the women in their lives, while others might go emotionally distant in despair. It's important for men to understand that women have not been withholding, just doing the best they can during a time when feminine power was less available. Now we have the opportunity to reintroduce the sacred marriage into our relationships, not only male to female, but self to self. What is the sacred marriage? When the masculine and feminine can join in equal but opposite balanced relationship, the power of both is increased exponentially. This is not a static relationship, but a dovetailing whereby each covers the other in equal measure. The problem remains, how do we find a representation of feminine power for women and men to align with? This power exists at the quantum level. Over the ages, we've simply disconnected from it. Ceremony, at its core, is an organized set of rituals designed to manage matter at the quantum level. There are ancient archetypal representations that hold the key to varying frequencies. These archetypes have been held in the collective consciousness of humankind for millennia. By combining ritual and archetypes, we can reintroduce the frequency of the archetype at the quantum level of our lives, thus granting us access. One archetypal deity that provides a great representation of the goddess in many of her forms is the ancient Celtic goddess Brigid. Our guest this hour, Courtney Weber, author of Brigid, History, Mystery, and Magic of the Celtic Goddess, is a priestess, tarot advisor, activist, and practicing witch in New York City. She's the high priestess for the New York City chapter of Novices of Old Ways, a progressive witchcraft community. She's also the author of The Tarot for One, The Art of Reading Your Own Cards. Both of Courtney's works are available through Wiser Books. I'll introduce Courtney, and together we'll explore the history and modern-day application of ceremony and the Celtic goddess Brigid. You're listening to The Science of Magic. Prior innovative episodes can always be found on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State-certified occupational school, training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com. Welcome back. This is The Science of Magic, dedicated to unification and evolution of consciousness. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our guest this hour is Courtney Weber, the author of Brigid, History, Mystery, and Magic of the Celtic Goddess. Her website, www.thecocowitch.com. That's www.thecocowitch.com. Courtney, thank you so much for joining us on The Science of Magic.
Oh, thank you, Gwilda. It's a pleasure to be here.
We should have fun today. So are you going to be Courtney or Brigid today?
I'm always Courtney, yeah.
So what are the origins of the Celtic goddess Brigid?
Well, they're very complex, and that's one thing I tell people is there seems to be an interest in the neo-pagan movement of something of an idea of purity and getting to the pure source. And so I often ask people, so raise your hand if you are interested in purely Celtic lore. And when people raise their hands, I say, okay, well, I think it's time to give up that search, because they're really the Celts were a very mixed people. That's something we really don't seem, we tend to think that they're a homogenous group, but they're really called the Celts because of their area of the world, and it was a mixture of different tribes that came from all over the world. We're not really sure where they all came from, and some believe East Asia, some even believe as far as Africa, and some believe Central Europe, and they moved out further west and began intermarrying with the indigenous people of what became the Celtic world, and became its own nation. Not really one nation, but more of a collection of nations where there was some government, and but a lot of it was like loosely connected tribes. And each of these regions had their own way of connecting to a higher power, and most of these regions had the idea was that the divine was really in the spirit of the earth, the spirit of the tree, the spirit of the water, and each and every one of these beings had an individual spirit. In many cases, the spirit of these beings was called the Great Lady. as the Celtic language began to unify in the different areas, a lot of times that there was the short word Brish was like for the great lady of the water, the great lady of the trees, the great lady of the earth. And so later when the Romans came north, they heard about this goddess that was called Brige of many different things, and this goddess Brige was this goddess of the trees, this goddess of the earth, this goddess of the water, and they may have misunderstood, and instead of thinking of this being a title for these different aspects of divinity, they thought it was one goddess that was the specific goddess of all of these things. And when the Romans were bringing their own influences in, the idea of the goddess Brigantia became very popular in what is now England and France and a little further Western Europe. And Brigantia had many of the characteristics of the Roman goddess Athena, but she also carried a jug of water, which we typically don't see Athena carry. As the Romans continued to increase their presence in the Celtic world, they started to suppress a lot of the indigenous religions of that area. But where they didn't suppress the worship of the old gods was in Ireland. They never made it to Ireland. That's something a lot of people don't realize. And so Irish paganism continued to flourish. And Brigid was flourishing. Some people believe Brigid was always in Ireland. Some people believe that Brigid came over as Brigantia when some of the British Celts fled the Roman invasion and moved in and bringing their own gods with them. And some say that Brigid was only ever Saint Brigid, but was called a pagan goddess by the Protestants in order to discredit her. So there's a lot we don't know about Brigid, but what we do know is that throughout history, specific deities of great renown or specific women of great renown were called the Brigid in some form. In some areas that was Brigida, and even some areas she was called Freyd. And it basically meant exalted one, the greatest of whatever it was. And so as Brigid continued to grow throughout the centuries, she really embodied that which was what was greatest about humanity, which was greatest about the planet, and which was greatest about the people, the individuals in it. We have to remember that in the pre-Christian era, the world was a very scary place, and the gods were not necessarily benevolent. They were more embodiments of forces of nature that had to be fought and tamed as opposed to worshipped and adored. But Brigid was one of the few goddesses whose patronage was over things that made the world better, such as fresh food, such as healing wells, such as music, the things that made human life worth living in a time when human life was very hard were under Brigid's care. And as Catholicism eventually made its way through Europe and Ireland, Brigid became a saint. So no longer was she the goddess, but she was now a saint of many of the same things in which she was before the conversion to Christianity. There was also a historical Brigid by the same name. Again, we're thinking about this woman probably having the title of Brigid as opposed to it actually being her name. And she was an archdruidess in Kildare, Ireland, which is in central Ireland. And she actually converted the shrine herself from being a pagan shrine that was dedicated for women, only by women, and men could not appear. And when, but she kept it pretty much the same. One of the characteristics, or the legend has it, is that there were 19 priestesses that would tend this fire shrine, a different one every single night. But on the 20th night, the fire was left burning alone, and it was said, "Brigid, tend your flame, for this night belongs to you." And but when the Catholicism came in, that simply became the shrine to St. Brigid, and it was 19 nuns that tended this flame, one each night. And on the 20th night, they would say, "St. Brigid, tend your fire, for this belongs to you." And this fire burned up until the Reformation, when the Protestants extinguished it for several hundred years. It has since been relit in Kildare and is tended by an order of Brigidine sisters who are Catholic nuns that are dedicated to St. Brigid and her legacy. So Brigid really hasn't gone anywhere. But another really interesting piece about Brigid's history is her possible connections to the religion of Voodoo, which many understand as voodoo. When the indentured servitude when the indentured servants were brought to the United States and the Caribbean, these Irish individuals were working alongside enslaved Africans. And so this is where the religion of Vodou really was born, was from the different African nations that were brought to this country against their will, along that, and they were picking up information and practices from the indigenous people of those Caribbean islands, and also picking up a few pieces here and there from the indentured servants who were bringing their Irish Catholicism with them. And so there is a character in Vodou, she's called a Loa, which is not quite a deity, but it's certainly a very exalted kind of spirit, named Maman Brigitte. And Maman Brigitte is said to be the one Loa who has white skin and red hair, and that she is the patroness of the cemetery, and she is married to the Baron Smeti. There's some controversy around this. Some Vodou practitioners and historians don't believe that there's a connection, but many do. I personally think that this world is very complex, and so I'm not surprised if some of these pieces were picked up along the way. But I do like to mention it because I know there are some people out there who are really nervous about the religion of Vodou, but feel very, very comfortable with the religion of the Celts. And my feeling is, if you're feeling really good about the Celts, you can't slam Vodou, because many of your same deities in the Celtic world may likely have a role in Vodou as well. So that's
pretty amazing. So if we bring all this into present time, how can we, our common folk here today, use the archetype bridge to realign with the feminine?
Well, see, I remember what you said in the beginning, and my feeling is the feminine really never left. I don't think, just as Bridget has been around for thousands of years, and her worship never went away, it just changed form. And interestingly enough, I went to see the Dead Sea Scrolls a number of years ago, and I grew up Christian and hearing about the Christian God, Jehovah, Yahweh, and how powerful he was, and you shall have no gods before him. But when I saw the Dead Sea Scrolls and saw that back in the Middle East, thousands of years ago, the worship of God's wife, Asherah, was so important that was one of the reasons why the Bible was condemning that kind of worship. They had to do something and to try to keep it. So I don't think that this has ever gone away. I think the feminine spirit has continued to thrive and is perhaps gaining strength. It may have been dampened a bit just because of more of the patriarchal overtones of religion over the last couple thousand years. But that's one of Bridget's strengths, is the fact that she's never left this world. It doesn't feel like we're waking a goddess back up. It feels like we're simply giving her a little more time at the microphone, so to speak.
I like that. So it's kind of like what I was feeling is that it's not a matter of the deity or the energy is always here. It's just what are we aligned with or connected with? And that being the case, I know that Bridget was kind of reserved for women early on, but what's the benefit do you see for men working with the goddess as well at this point?
Well, I think all people of all genders find a home with Bridget, because Bridget is often considered a foster mother, and many of us in this world are adrift. Many people's ancestors were brought to their country against their will. Many people's ancestors were displaced from their homeland. And some ancestors, like mine, chose to leave their homeland because of poverty and came to this world. And so there's a sense of millions of people, right? And then now we're in a space where we have people being forced from their homes because of war, and so there's the refugee situation is very intense right now. And Bridget has always been a foster mother, and that's one of her stories. And so I think that interest in her and her presence is increasing because there's a sense in which we're all kind of looking for a spiritual foster mother, and especially because Bridget's people were forced to leave, whether it was the story about the British Druids fleeing England, or whether it was the Irish emigrating or going into indentured servitude. She seems to have become a real patroness for people who are displaced from ancestral homeland. And I see this among people from all different backgrounds. I've met a lot of people from Jamaica who feel very akin to Bridget, or from Puerto Rico, or from Central America. And so it's certainly not about whether or not you have Irish heritage. It's certainly, I think it's a lot of it is, although there's quite a bit of Irish heritage in the Caribbean, most people don't seem to realize, but I think it's more about what your soul is calling for right now. And
We're going to have to take a little break. When we come back on the other side of this break, I would love to talk about how we can use ceremony to access the archetype of Bridge. We'll return to our discussion after this short break. You're listening to The Science of Magic. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Do you want to hear more? Previous broadcasts of innovative episodes can always be found on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State-certified occupational school training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com. Welcome back. This is The Science of Magic, a place where magic and science come together to promote enlightenment. Visit us online at www.thescienceofmagic.net. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our guest this hour is priestess and practicing witch COURTNEY WEBER, the author of Bridget, History, Mystery, and Magic of the Celtic Goddess. Her website is www.thecocowitch.com. That would be www.thecocowitch.com. COURTNEY, when we went into the break, we were getting ready to look at the use of ceremony to access and work with archetypes. What do you have to tell us about that?
So ceremony is a truly creative process. There's a lot of wonderful, very structured traditions out there who have very specific, regimented ceremonies for invoking a deity, and they certainly have some very powerful results. But here's the thing about Bridget. If you want to work with her, it's really about your creation also keeping it deeply personal, because she is a goddess of the hearth and home and of things that keep people comfortable and grounded, but she's also a goddess of the bards, and so she really appreciates creativity. So when people ask me the right way to approach Bridget, my response is however you feel like it, or whatever is calling to you, with respect. If she knocked at your door and asked to come in, what might you offer her? And I had one friend who said, well, normally my family offers toast and coffee. And I said, well, I think that might be a fine thing to bring to your ritual space, as that's a way of saying, Bridget has come, Bridget is welcome. I mean, a lot of the ceremonies to invoke Bridget were done around the home, usually around the early February, when the Celts, and later the Irish believed that the first stirrings of spring were coming, and it would involve somebody basically dressing up as Bridget or carrying a bundle of rushes dressed in a white dress, and the family would basically say, Bridget has come, Bridget is welcome, and bring the person inside, and it was a symbol of welcoming the springtime. So all of these rituals, again, very simple, very meaningful, and very personal to the practitioner. And that's, I think, is the key. Make sure, because this is about your connection to the divine. And while other ceremonies you may read about or learn about may help you, it may give you some sort of structure. You don't have to follow everything that you read specifically. It really does need to be a deeply personal experience.
So because Bridget has so many faces, that gives us a lot more ways to align with her. And how do we know which of her faces or of her expressions is appropriate to work with at any given time?
Well, I think it really depends on your situation, and that's one of the wonderful things about Bridget is I think she manifests with the face that you need at the right time. So, for example, say you were working on a piece of art or a project for work, and you needed some inspiration. Well, then naturally the bardic face of Bridget might be appropriate. But also if there's something in this world that's really breaking your heart, maybe example you're seeing some of the pain of racism right now in our system, or the situation with this guy who's getting off free for assaulting a woman. I mean, that might be a time to invoke the face of Bridget, the justice worker. She was also a warrior, and that might be a time when you want to utilize that. I think it really also depends on your ultimate intention, because Bridget was very much about keeping the peace, even though keeping the peace sometimes meant going to war. It had to mean, what is the ultimate objective? Are we going to war because we want to take from someone else, or are we going to war because we want to protect what we have and the people that we love from people who are trying to harm us? And so that's a kind of thing that she would do. She was not really a goddess of invading other nations in order to keep the peace at home. She was a goddess of protecting who's already at home. Perhaps there's danger present. And so if someone is wanting to evoke that face of Bridget to say for a more personal empowerment, that might not be the face of Bridget to use. But if it's about to right a wrong or to invoke justice to a situation that is unjust, that would certainly be the case. But you were asking me earlier about people of different genders approaching Bridget, and I don't feel like Bridget is, although she has the history with women, I don't think that she is certainly only for people who identify as women. I think anyone of any gender can find one of the faces of Bridget that suits them.
So what are we really doing when we ceremonially align with an archetype? What's the energy or the science behind it? Do you have anything to say on that?
Well, I think there's also a difference between the archetype and the actual deity themselves. I mean, the deities are the greatest parts of our human consciousness, and we have been believing in them for so long and honoring them for so long that they have become real and conscious. Whether we created them or they created us is one of those mysteries we won't be solving on this show today. But I would say threads of them are connected to each and every one of our souls. So it starts by accessing that part of ourself and reaching out to them. And the difference is that an archetype is more like a major symbol that many people can identify with, but it doesn't have the kind of consciousness that the gods actually embody. So we can invoke an archetype, but I think at that point we're accessing more of the collective mental consciousness as opposed to reaching out to a deity when we're connecting with the human soul on a grander level.
So it's a kind of a continuum. Are you like
Yes.
We can either look at the basic archetype, or we can really connect with the energy of it that's been formed over years of belief and worship?
Absolutely.
Interesting. I like that. So why do you see Bridget as healing?
She's had a connection with healing ever since her connection with water and wells back in the Celtic world. So if you imagine that the Celts lived in an area where getting water could be rather dangerous. Water itself could be dangerous with major rainstorms, and the Irish and the North Atlantic the Irish Sea and the North Atlantic are very dangerous bodies of water. Even the rivers themselves in parts of Ireland and England can look very lovely, but have pretty treacherous undercurrents. I assume it's the same in other areas of Western Europe where I've not spent as much time, but there were areas where you could find a natural well. So in a time when you didn't have plumbing to clean your water, how blessed was it to come across a hole in the ground or a spring from a rock that had clean water, which naturally hydration and sanitation improves health. Now the Celts didn't necessarily connect all of that, but they knew that approaching the wells would make them healthy. But instead of knowing about the actual science of the water, they knew that by taking it in, they would feel better, and so they were considered magic wells. And then over the centuries, as Catholicism moved in, they were called holy wells. So Bridget was connected with them because she was the great lady of the well, the Bridget of the well. And so that is where her connection with healing comes from. And this seems to be one of the major characteristics that people people go to her for. I was on an interview a couple of years ago someone asked me what my coven is most often approached for when it comes to magic, and I said the number one thing we're approached for is healing, not because we're known for it, but because that is what most people approach for magic. Not so much their love lives, not so much money, but they really want to heal and feel better. And because magic is also, healing is also a leap of faith. We have wonderful innovations in our medical world now, but there's still always a leap of faith. There's always something that we aren't sure that the specific prescription that is given to us is exactly right for what we need, or there's an ailment that the doctors still haven't figured out. Maybe this medicine will work, maybe it won't. So healing always will have a faith component to it. And I think that's where Bridget is still very, very strong.
So she helps you align with the faith in your own healing?
Absolutely.
That's a powerful image, isn't it? That the body can actually heal itself and take in whatever is being offered to support that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Nice. So if I were ill, I would approach Bridget for healing, like with the well or the water, or how would you do that? What would that look like?
Again, it's a personal thing. But you could what I would do if you don't have access to a healing well, if you're not in a part of the world that has a statue of Bridget or something like that. I mean, like here in New York City, we have a statue of St. Bridget in St. Patrick's Cathedral, where I often encourage people to go and visit and light a candle. So that's one way. But if, for example, if you didn't have that, I would even make a cup of tea, set out perhaps a snack, some cookies or something like that, in the area that's really the pulse of your home. If it's your living room, if you're lucky enough to have a fireplace, for me, it's sitting next to the radiator or the air conditioner, depending on the weather itself. I live in an apartment without a fireplace. And setting out that offering and saying, Bridget has come, Bridget is welcome. And then offering up, what is it that you need to be healed from? This may be a prayer you say silently in your head. It may be something that you say aloud, but that's something that you can say, I need to have this delivered from me. We're
going to have to pick up with how do we approach Bridget for healing and the well for healing on the other side of a break here. We will be back on the flip side of this short break. You're listening to The Science of Magic, the place where altruistic professionals of science and the esoteric create common ground for the betterment of our world. You can always listen to previous broadcasts on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State certified occupational school training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com. Welcome back. This is The Science of Magic, bringing together gifted people of service to the world. Our website is www.thescienceofmagic.net, and I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our guest this hour is priestess and practicing witch COURTNEY WEBER, the author of Bridget, History, Mystery, and Magic of the Celtic Goddess. Her website is www.thecocowitch.com, and we were discussing how we can approach Bridget and the well to find physical healing. COURTNEY, I have never seen a well of Bridget. Now, I'm out here in the West, so you were about to tell us what we can do if we don't have access to a well that's been kept and all that stuff?
Well, my feeling is any body of water would be sacred to Bridget. Now, of course, here in North America, we need to remember that we are occupiers on this land, and so when you first approach, if you wanted to use a local natural water source as part of your practice, you want to first acknowledge that this river or lake was more than likely sacred to a different version of the divine or different deity at one time. And so after making that acknowledgement, then perhaps sometimes it's also nice to make an offering of something, that's, whether it's flowers, or some people like to leave cornmeal, tobacco, something that would be non-toxic to animals passing by, and then making that request to use the space to do your offering to Bridget. And then from there, simply the phrase "Bridget is come, Bridget is welcome" has been used for generations to invoke the spirit of Bridget to a space. At that place, offer to the water that which is troubling you and ask the water to wash it away. If it's the kind of river or body of water that's safe to bathe in, that might be something you consider. I live in New York City, and I can visit the Hudson River, but I certainly don't go swim in it. But that doesn't mean that I can't offer my troubles to it. And sometimes it's a verbal thing. I just talk to the water and have it, it's taken away. And I feel the presence of Bridget with me. I also feel the presence of the even older spirits of the river that have been there for, before my ancestors came to this area, and really connect with Bridget's relationship to healing, cleansing water. And if you don't have that, you can also make one in your bathroom. You can create, turn your evening bath into the healing well. And that might just be even praying over the water, saying, "Bridget, please turn this space into a healing well for me." And then envision that bath, that tub of water that you're working with, is actually a healing well, and know that that's true. Know that her presence will be there and will create that kind of healing environment that you need, and using that bath in order to heal from whatever it is that's been hurting or harming you.
So there's that faith piece again, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
As I listen to you, it seems that there's a lot of similarity between, working with Bridget and Celtic shamanism. What's the difference, if you know, between Celtic shamanism and the Celtic religion you discuss in your book?
Well, it's kind of hard to say. I feel that the idea of Celtic shamanism is still working to define itself. It's certainly coming from very old principles that have gone away for a very long time. But I know a number of men and women in Ireland that you really could be called Celtic shamans, and I think that. Again, shamanism is a very unique kind of practice in many parts of this world, and especially in this part of the world where a lot of the traditions the older traditions were wiped away by the induction of Christianity, and so now there's a sense of putting the pieces back together. And I think that that's one way in which it's common with the worship of Bridget. Of course, the worship of Saint Bridget hasn't gone anywhere, and that's certainly stayed around through the world for hundreds of years, but the idea of Bridget as the goddess is something that the world is still returning to, if that makes sense. I should also mention with healing, while I've seen miracles happen with using Bridget and healing, I don't want people to go in with that sort of expectation or using that in the replacement of medical advice or things. Sometimes I feel like Bridget's magic its key is to help you find the right treatment for yourself. And so I've seen many people working with this, with Bridget's healing magic, and suddenly they have a new question they mean to ask their doctor, or say, I really should bring up this other symptom I've been having that might be related to the problem that I'm having. And that information helps the doctors get them on the course that they need to be on. It also allows people to surrender the kind of panic that we have when we try to control every aspect of our being, and say, not everything about my health may be in my control. Some is, and some may not be. But in surrendering that kind of panic, I can give myself the freedom to be open to new possibilities in my journey to health.
Got it. Before we run out of time, I would really love to have you tell us where people can find your books.
Well, I say first ask your local bookstores. Many of the local New Age, spiritual, and occult bookstores are carrying Bridget. If they don't have it, ask for it and they can order it. It's always best to support your local bookstore first. Some of the bigger bookstores, I believe, are carrying it in many areas. You can also order it from my website. It's www.thecocowitch.com. But then lastly, you can also order it from Amazon, but I really encourage people to support their local independent booksellers first and then support the big guys last.
Before it takes over the world, right?
Well, there's such a community spirit in the smaller bookstores. We don't want to lose that.
Absolutely. I totally agree. So does a person have to give up their own religion in order to work with Bridget?
No, I don't think so at all. Again, because she's worn so many faces in different faiths, I think that she's very comfortable and at home. Just today, I gave a St. Bridget's cross to a Christian woman who I actually had a dream that she was weaving St. Bridget crosses. And I said, I think this belongs to you. And although her version of Christianity, I don't think includes saint worship, she was very, very happy to receive this embodiment of both a saint and a goddess because she understood the symbolism behind it and why it seemed to apply to her.
What advice do you have for our listeners that might be interested in engaging with Bridget, and where does one begin?
Well, I'd say begin at home and begin with in just simple prayer, and I think she will show you the way. My feeling is if someone is already feeling drawn to Bridget, she's already present with them. So I don't think it takes a whole lot of searching. But I also say the internet is really our friend, and there are so many groups of people out there gathering to honor Bridget and to work with Bridget. If any of your listeners are in Portland, Oregon later in the month, I will be giving a talk at If the Broom Fits in Tigard on Saturday, June 25th.
I love it.
And isn't it a great title, If the Broom Fits? So yes, I would love to have people out there if they're listening. Again, June 25th. Other than that, yes, please keep reading, and not just even my book. There's a lot of wonderful books out there on Bridget right now. So I'd say keep reading and keep being open. If this is truly what your heart desires, you will find the people you're meant to practice with.
What do you think is the most powerful message Bridget has for our time?
Oh gosh, we could be here all day.
Well, in 1 minute or less.
I would say it would be to be kind, but be firm. She's not a passive goddess. She doesn't just accept the world the way that it is. She wants things to get better. She wants there to be justice, especially for those who are under systems of oppression, especially for those who are victims of violence. And at the same time, she wants us to be kind and compassionate to one another, even while we're working to improve, even if we may have differences of opinion in how to fix these things.
That's beautiful. Courtney, I can't thank you enough for being on the show and sharing the gorgeous goddess Bridget with us and all your wonderful wisdom. Would love to dance with you again sometime.
Oh, please do. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a real joy.
Our guest this hour is priestess and practicing witch Courtney WEBER, the author of Bridget, History, Mystery, and the Magic of the Celtic Goddess. Her website is www.thecocowitch.com. That's THECOCOWITCH.com. This has been The Science of Magic. It's been so much fun to share this time and the goddess with everyone out there. I'm hoping that everyone can get reconnected with their feminine side, both men and women, so that we can bring balance back to our world. This has been The Science of Magic. Remember, you can always listen to past thought-provoking episodes on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. Until next time, dear ones, may you be blessed with knowledge, comforted with love, and live in unity.